I'm glad you're here today. We're not frozen like we were last week. Do you like the cold? No. Why didn't you tell me that before I moved? Although it's cold everywhere in our nation, I think just about right now. But have you ever walked on a frozen pond? Yeah. What I think is interesting is if you go out to walk on a frozen pond, there's something I see that happens, and I've done this myself. You go out, and there's this frozen pond, and you're kind of like, you put one foot over and kind of, you know what I'm saying? Kind of put a little bit of weight just to see if it's going to go, see if it's going to hold. And then you get brave enough, and what do? Both feet go out, right? It's really easy to talk about walking on the ice, and it's a lot harder to actually walk on the ice. Because you don't know if it's going to hold. You don't know if you get out there and it's just going to break and you're going to fall. You don't really know. It's a whole lot easier from the bank to talk about how cool it is walking on a pond that's frozen than it is to actually get out there and do it. You know what I'm saying? Walking in faith, stepping in the unknown onto this ice, not really knowing if it's going to hold, but you're going to do it anyway. Brave faith. But you know what? Faith carries a risk. Faith carries a risk because it moves before things are absolutely proven. Faith is causing you to move, step out there, take a risk. Even though it's not proven, you're moving before it's proven. There's a risk. And I've been going through Joshua and reading through there, preaching through Joshua. And we're in chapter 2. And I've been reading this, going over it. And there's several ways I could have preached out of Joshua chapter 2 with Rahab. There's several ways. And I'm going to preach about her faith, though. I'm going to preach about her walking in faith and the risk that's involved with walking in faith as she's stepping into an unknown future. But I want to read Joshua 2. Can we open our Bibles to Joshua 2? And what I'm going to do, I'm going to read the whole thing, and then we're just going to talk our way through it this morning. It reads like this. And Joshua the son of Nun sent 2 men secretly from Shittim as spies, saying, "Go view the land, especially Jericho." And they went and they came into the house of a prostitute whose name was Rahab, and lodged there. And it was told to the king of Jericho, "Behold, men of Israel have come here tonight to search out the land." Then the king of Jericho sent to Rahab, saying, "Bring out the men who have come to you, who've entered your house, for they have come to search out all the land." But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. And she said, "True, the men have come to me, but I did not know where they were from." And when the gate was about to be closed at dark, the men went out. I do not know where they went. Pursue them quickly, for you will overtake them. But she had brought them up to the roof and hid them with the stalks of flax that she had laid in order on the roof. So the men pursued after them on the way to the Jordan as far as the fords, and the gate was shut as soon as the pursuers had gone out. Before the men lay down, she came up to them on the roof and said to the men, "I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that the fear of you has fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land melt away before you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water on the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the 2 kings and the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon and Og, whom you devoted to destruction. And as soon as we heard it, our hearts melted, and there was no spirit left in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, He is God in the heavens above and the earth beneath. Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that as I have dealt kindly with you, you also will deal kindly with my father's house. And give me a sure sign that you will save alive my father, and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and deliver our lives from death." And the men said to her, "Our life for yours, even to death. If you do not tell this business of ours, then when the Lord gives us the land, we will deal kindly and faithfully with you." Then she let them down by a rope through the window, for her house was built into a city wall, so that she lived in the wall. And she said to them, "Go into the hills, or the pursuers will encounter you, and hide there 3 days until the pursuers have returned. Then afterward you may go your way." Then the men said to her, "We will be guiltless with respect to this oath of yours that you have made us swear. Behold, when we have come into the land, we shall tie this scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down, and you shall gather into your house your father and mother, your brothers, and all your father's household. Then anyone goes out the doors of your house into the street, his blood shall be on his own head, and we shall be guiltless. But if a hand is laid on anyone who is with you in the house, his blood shall fall on our head. But if you tell this business of ours, then we shall be guiltless with respect to your oath that you have made us swear." And she said, "According to your words, so be it." Then she sent them away, and they departed, and she tied the scarlet cord in the window. They departed and went into the hills and remained there 3 days until the pursuers returned, and the pursuers searched all along the way and found nothing. Then the 2 men returned. They came down from the hills and passed over, came to Joshua the son of Nun, and they told him all that had happened to them. And they said to Joshua, "Truly the Lord has given all the land into our hands, and also all the inhabitants of the land melt away because of us." Now, we can find out later as you read on, as the Israelites came in and they set up against Jericho, that the walls did fall, but Rahab and her house was indeed saved. Rahab, the Bible is so eloquent to call her a prostitute in multiple places. Not the best profession, right? And people have argued over Bible scholars that some talk about it being an innkeeper and not just, but either way, Old and New Testament refer to her as a prostitute, but yet through that she has done some great things regardless of what a reputation has. So if you hear nothing else, regardless of what anybody else thinks or what they might call you, that doesn't discredit you from doing something amazing and mighty for God. But faith, the first point I want to talk to you about this chapter is faith begins at the edge of the unknown. Faith begins at the edge of the unknown. It's where the solid bank meets the unproven ice. One thing I know about God is He rarely ever calls people to where everything is just easily explainable. Very, very visible. Very rarely is everything proven beforehand when we have to follow where God is leading. See, it's like where faith begins. We're standing at the bank. We're looking out over this ice that the Lord may be calling us to step out on, and you feel a risk. The bank feels a lot more secure. It feels a lot safer than stepping out on the ice. But faith doesn't begin when you feel safe. You know that? It begins when you trust what you can't fully prove. And as an example of that, Peter walked on water, didn't he? You know that story? Peter walked on water. Peter didn't wait for the sea that he walked on to feel safe before he stepped out on it. He stood at the edge where faith begins, at the edge of that boat, looking out onto the water. And he didn't wait, "Lord, once this feels safe, then I'm going to step out and go. He stepped out. He began to walk. Rahab stood at the bank of this life that she knew. Her whole life, she has a reputation, a history. She is living in the wall. She's part of Jericho. She knows what's going on. She knows how to provide for herself. She knows what life is about at that moment. And she's standing with what she can understand, looking out into what she doesn't know, looking into a future that she has no clue about. Unknown, at the edge. But she's willing to take a step, not before she feels safe, but take a step in faith, to have some risk. And she was redeemed because she did that. And not just redeemed. God set her up amazingly. She was redeemed from destruction, but in her own line came King David, came King Solomon. King David is the Old and New Testament say of David, he is a man after God's own heart. The only person in the Bible to have that said about him, and multiple times, came from Rahab's line. And Solomon, the wisest of them all, came from her line. This prostitute that was willing to take an unknown step into a future that God called her into. And not only those two, but through her line, also Jesus Christ. Does it get any better than that? But her story, Rahab, is very similar to our story of faith. Rahab had a life, and it wasn't so good. And then she had an encounter with the Lord, and her life changed forever. She was redeemed from destruction. Isn't that what happens to us? I had a story. You had a story. It wasn't so pleasant. We weren't all picture perfect. We had issues. We had problems. And we were stuck in a life, and maybe we knew kind of how it was going to work out. Not really knowing we encounter God, not really knowing where this future in God is going to take us. That's where I was. At this moment, standing at the edge, looking into the unknown future, not knowing where it was going to go. But definitely knowing there was no future where I was standing. Rahab was saved from destruction. She was saved from destruction not because she agreed that Judaism was morally superior to her beliefs, right? You know, some people believe their salvation comes from, well, let me just put these moral principles into action in my life. That's not what saves you. That's just good behavior. She wasn't saved from destruction because she believed that the Lord existed, which I'm going to reference later, but even the demons believe that. They're not saved. She wasn't saved because she had some special religious experience within a group of people, although those are wonderful. But that, again, is not what saved her. And she wasn't saved, she wasn't redeemed because she made an agreement to clean up her life and live better. That, again, is not what saves you. What saves you? She was saved by faith, to trust God's future over the future that she could make for herself. That's what saves you. When we're saved by grace through faith, it's not of ourselves, right? It's not a work that we do, or else we could boast about that. Look what I have done. It is my faith in the one who provides everything that I can't do. And I don't deserve it, but He gives it to me, and I'm going to stand on the fact that He says I can have it, and if He says it, I'm going to take it. And at that moment, when I place my faith into Him, everything changes forever. The good news is you don't have to feel any certain way for that to happen. We like to have this assurance to know Right? There's even some denominations that say, well, if you don't speak in tongues, you're not saved. And there's not a sign that takes place or a feeling that has to take place for you to be saved. It's your faith placed in Christ alone, done. Right? We want all these other things, but the fact is, if we have faith and really put everything into Jesus, that's all it takes, and we are saved, we are changed, our names are recorded in the Lamb's book of life. Saving faith. Faith to trust God's future over the future that we could make for our own self. Don't you know that God can do so much better with what we have than we can? You might be pretty good with what you got. I mean, you might be able to handle things very well, probably better than I can, but I can just tell you from my experience, God can do better with my life than I can do with my own life. Are you in agreement with me? How about for you? Not just about me, but for you too, right? God can do better with the future than we can. And as a church, I'm calling you to put your faith in God, because God can create a future for this church so much better than we can for ourselves. He's got a plan. He wants to see it prosper. He wants to see the gospel go forth. He wants to see the harvest come in. And His future is so much better than what we can build. Rahab, standing at the edge, she had trusted her own life, her own abilities up until a certain point. And now she's taking this risk. She's stepping into the unknown. She's stepping onto the ice. She has to put her full weight of her life into God's hands. And it's yet to be proven what kind of holy future would exist. But was there risk? Yeah, there was. Was there reward? We've already mentioned David, Solomon, all the kings that came. I'm telling you, a Gentile prostitute that didn't know the Lord probably wasn't standing at the edge thinking, well, I'm going to get to know this God, and through Him, through me, there's going to be all the kings of this godly nation. That was not in her mind. She took a risk, but there was such reward being willing to trust her life, the full weight of her life, into God's hands. Hebrews 11:1 says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Maybe you're familiar with that. I'll read it again. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. The substance we hope for. Walking in a new way. Walking, standing at the edge. I'm going to step out onto this ice. I'm going to walk out there. The evidence is stepping out onto the ice without it being proven that it would hold you. Belief and faith are different. And we attach them so closely sometimes that it can be hard to tell them apart. Your faith is not your belief. And again, we've equated, well, he's a man of faith to a man of moral beliefs. And it's not. Your faith is not your belief. Belief is believing something is true. Faith is acting as if it's true. There's a difference. There's a difference. And the difference is being able to talk it and being able to walk it, right? We've all heard, you can talk the talk. Can you walk the walk? We can believe something is true, and then to act as if it is true takes us to another level, a higher level, a level of action. Rahab didn't just believe God could do something. See, but faith Faith in her life called her into action. Second point I want to tell you today is faith calls you off the bank. Faith calls you off the bank. Jericho was her bank. Thick walls, strong gates, familiar life. I mean, the walls were built to keep people out. The walls were built to keep a town, a city safe. And she lived literally in the wall. The thing that was built to keep them safe, she found shelter in. That could be a false sense of security. What happened to those walls? We find later, they fell down, didn't they? They did. Living on those walls, those stone walls under your feet, I'm sure they felt pretty solid. But the Lord's asking her to leave what you think is safe. Leave what you think, that bank that you're standing on, that you have more safety in the solid feeling under your feet than what out there on the ice. And He's calling her, leave the bank. Risk what you've seen for what you haven't seen. Risk what you know and step into the unknown. She could have remained loyal to Jericho. Her faith called her off the bank, though. She could have failed to engage and just remained a spectator and watch and see what was going to transpire. But faith welled up in her to say, I know where you're at, but there's something more for you, and I want you to step into that direction. You don't live your dream by imagining it. You live your dream by making a move. When you dream of something big, when you dream of life that could be something great, it's just a dream until you put it into action. You don't live the dream until you start moving with it and make something happen with it. Other than that, it's just in your brain. It's just a thought. It's just an imagination. If you want it to come into action, you've got to take a step. And it's the same as a church. I can dream some big things. I can dream how I want to see the Lord do these mighty things. I don't know what He has in store. I just know it's more than where we're at. It's more than what we have. And I don't want to sit back and just dream about it and think about it. And boy, wouldn't it be nice if about it. I want to start taking steps. And sometimes we don't know what that's going to look like. We have to trust that we're going to step out on the ice and the Lord's calling us to a place. And if He's calling us to a place, it's not a place of danger. In Him we live and move and have our being. We don't lay and dream and have our being. Dreaming is good, but if it's never put into action, it doesn't do any good. I want to dream big. I want to believe big. I want to move to make something happen big and put faith in God. Also, Rahab standing at this edge, faith is calling her forward, and we find that she didn't play both sides. She didn't, okay, I'll listen to the Israelites, and okay, I still have Jericho over here, and let me just weigh these out and see which one is going to work better for me. Third thing I want to tell you today is faith doesn't keep one foot on the bank. If walking on the ice is what we're to do, you can't do that with a foot on the bank and a foot on the ice. We call that riding the fence, don't we? The Bible says you can't serve two masters. You're loyal to one, you hate the other. We can't honor the Lord and honor the world at the same time. To be a friend with the world is to be an enemy to God. We can't love the world so much to keep a foot in it and love the Lord so much to keep a foot in that. And you have to choose which one you're going to serve. There is a line drawn, and you have to step on one side or the other. You can't stay in the middle. She had to make a choice of where she was going to walk. Is my future going to be with the Lord? Is my future going to be right here in this life that I know? See, keeping one foot on the bank, there's a little bit of risk. You might get a foot wet if the ice breaks. But what does that say about your trust? What does that say about your faith? I trust it just enough, but I still have this little bit of control, because if it starts to break, I'm still in control, and I can get back over here where it's not going to be bad for me. You're not trusting you're trusting in the bank, not in the ice. Faith doesn't keep one foot on the bank. You know, I used to work with a lot of recovery ministries. And often, I would encounter these guys, and they came out of life of drug addiction, and the Lord has delivered them from alcohol, from drugs. But then every time there's a break in between sessions or after lunch, there's a lot of these guys that rush outside and they light up a cigarette, right? And I was talking to one of my friends who was that person, and I'm not, if you smoke, I'm not getting at that, but the Lord has delivered them. One guy in particular delivered him from addiction to methamphetamine, right? And delivered from meth. And I said, so God can change your life completely? Yeah. And he can deliver you entirely from drugs? Yeah. I said, and he can't do it from nicotine? And he said, well, I can't give up everything. And that's the point, right? What he's telling us is, I still have to have one foot of control over here in something. Now, it's not as bad as everything else was. What if we took a foot off the bank? What if we took a foot off the bank as a church and rushed out on the ice to see what God has in store? Because it's far greater than what we can imagine. Far greater. Rahab made a choice. Jericho or Israel? Of course, she chose Israel. Her faith was linked to trust. Where was she going to place her trust? If she would have left one foot on the ice, perhaps it would have looked like this. I'll help Israel a little bit, but not enough to be considered a traitor in my own city. I don't want to go that far. Or, let me try to secure both futures here. I want to help Israel, but at the same time, I'm going to try to fight for the safety of Jericho. Maybe that's one foot on the ice. Or maybe, I'm going to obey, but I'm going to delay my obedience. I'll do what you say, but I need to wait and watch and see what's going to happen first, just in case. That's a foot on the ice. And you know what happens as we try to survive sometimes. Try to survive. We try not to encounter damage or issues or pain or breaking through the ice, right? We want to survive. I think we need to stop trying to survive and start trusting God enough to obey, even if failure feels possible. Think about that one. When we're called to do something of God, we're not called to just do it a little bit. Well, I don't know. I mean, we could really fail. This could really cost us. When we're called of God, trust if God is calling you to a place, it's not a place of danger. And if it is dangerous, He will shelter you under His wing. But if we're not fully committed to His plan, we can't expect Him to fully give what He has wanted to give to us. Am I right? If not, tell me I'm wrong. Show me, And I'll agree with you, but the way I see it is if we don't fully commit to God, we're missing out on what he fully wants for us. And he wants awesome, mighty, and great things for you, for your life, for this church, for me, for your family. Rahab stepped fully onto the Lord's side, trusting him completely. And again, what do we find? She was saved. Fourth thing, saving faith is a weight transfer. What do I mean by that? You transfer all your weight from the bank out completely onto the ice. Saving faith. Saving faith. When you were saved, you placed your faith in Jesus Christ fully. If you don't place your faith fully in Christ, you're not saved. It's a full commitment. Without that full commitment, see, it's all or nothing. You give it all to Jesus, or you hold on to something. Jesus paid it all. We sang this morning, he's worthy of it all. I have come to the place in my life where I'm giving Jesus everything, and that complete surrender is when I buy in and he gives me life. Saving faith is a weight transfer. Picking her feet up from the Jericho side and planting both feet onto the side of the Lord. This was her confession. I know the Lord has given you the land. That's pretty, that is wrapped in faith. Because she didn't say, I know the Lord is going to give you the land. She's declaring it already. I know the Lord has given you the land. And you know what she did right there? It was a declaration of authority. She's denouncing any authority that her previous king had in her life. Her faith shifted. It wasn't Jericho's land anymore. She agreed there was no authority there. The authority belonged to the Lord. And we know this, that faith comes by hearing. Doesn't the Bible tell us that? And she said this, we heard how the Lord dried up the Red Sea, and we heard what you did to the kings, that you devoted them to destruction. And then she said, the Lord your God, he is God, in heavens above and on earth beneath. She's shifting her weight from any belief she may have had into acknowledging who the Lord is, acknowledging his authority, and saying he is the Lord of all, including her own life. She didn't try to negotiate the outcomes of what may happen in life, but she trusted God with the consequences. And when God calls us to do something, anything, something big, we can trust him with the consequences. We fear consequence so many times in actions. I mean, don't we? We train our kids by punishment. If you do this, there's a severe consequence. And if you do it again, you're going to have to weigh out the consequence versus the action. And we are taught to fear the consequence and have right behavior. But I'm telling you, we can trust God with any consequence that happens if we're walking in faith. We can trust him that anything that happens out of that, it's going to be okay. The Lord, the night before, or just before he was crucified, was in the garden and he was praying. And he said, Lord, if there's any other way at all that this can work out, let's do that. He said, there's not. And Jesus said, you know what? I'm going to trust you with the consequences of me going through this. I'm going to trust you that not my will, but yours be done. I'm going to trust you with the consequence of what's getting ready to happen. And when he did, it changed everything. She placed her weight on the ice, trusting it was sufficient to hold her up. It's like when you sit in a chair. You plop down in the chair, and you don't start to push it a little bit. Oh, let me get something that's close to my weight and set it in that chair to see if it's going to hold first. And okay, you just sit down with faith, knowing hey, this thing is going to hold me. And let me tell you, sometimes it doesn't pay to put your faith in a chair. I was at a pizza place. with a friend. And at this pizza place is I don't know if it was a cheerleading competition, but it was full of busloads of all these cheerleaders, right? And I'm sitting there with my buddy. We're talking, and I'm leaning back in this old rickety chair. And I put my faith in that pretty well. But under stress, a heavy load, the chair legs that are like this decided to do this. And they bent both ways out, and I went down and rolled across the floor in the middle of the pizza place with every cheerleader going, whoosh, looking to see what happened. In that moment, I did realize that you don't need to put your faith in every single thing there is. Only certain things can hold you up. It was embarrassing. I felt very embarrassed. And got up, got another chair. Tell you, I already felt fat by sitting at a pizza buffet, but now it's like, oh man, a pound of cherries on top, I'm telling you. But God can hold the weight, can't He? To walk fully in faith, we must fully trust in the Lord's ability to hold us up. If we're going to walk fully in faith as a church, the Lord has got this. That's not just a cliche saying so we feel better about down times. The Lord has got this. Rahab said to the spies, "Swear to me by the Lord," because she knew that the Lord could handle the weight of her faith. Fifth thing I want to share with you, faith hangs its weight on the promise. Faith hangs its weight on the promise. Rahab asked for a sign. She asked for a sign of a promise of salvation. And we know that she let these men down from the window on this scarlet cord, and they hung from this cord, and they're coming down, and she's saying, "Hey, I need something to hang my faith on." And you say, "You know what? There is a promise. That scarlet cord that you let us down with, you can hang your weight on that promise. I need you to hang that from your window. Hang it from your window, and then, when we come, we'll see that, and you'll be spared." That scarlet cord represented a covenant promise, and there's so much I would love to just to preach about that. There's a lot in that. This covenant promise. But here's something, though. She hung this cord out of her window publicly. Faith is a public declaration. It's not a private decision. We don't teach that. We don't, somehow, somewhere along the lines, we have turned into everybody bow your heads, close your eyes. I'm not even going to have you raise your hand. Like, we don't want to put anybody to make them feel uncomfortable. We don't want to call anybody forward. We don't want to do any of that because everybody's got to feel comfortable if they're going to receive the Lord. We want them to, no. Faith is a public declaration. And that's not a private decision. It's a public declaration of all places. In this place, if you can't celebrate what God has done right here, there's no way. If you can't stand up in front of others in here, where everybody is of like-minded faith and we all believe and will celebrate with you, how are you going to do it out beyond the walls of the church? But faith isn't something that's a private decision. The people that you work with should know that you are a person of great faith. But sadly, there's stories that sound like this. One person, I attended a funeral, and I did the funeral, and somebody there says, "Oh man, I didn't know he was a Christian. I worked with him 25 years. Faith isn't private, public. public. The scarlet cord represented this promise, a public declaration. And here's the thing. Rahab didn't wait for the walls to start shaking before she hung the cord out the window. She did it beforehand. She did it while the city was still strong, while the king was still in charge, and while the risk was still real. Every day, encountering risk, as the cord hung out her window. I believe that the Lord can radically change this whole community, this whole county. I believe it. But we don't need to wait to hang the cord out the window until we start seeing a shaking. We need to hang the cord out now and believe what God is going to do. Another thing, she could hang her weight on the promise. She didn't leave the place of promise. The promise said, hang the cord, you gather you and your family, and you come into your house. Where do we find her later at? She's in the house. She did not leave the promise. This is where it was said, and that's where she stayed to stay in the promise. And there's many churches today that are in decline. You've seen it. We've seen it. There's churches in decline. Let me tell you something about a church in decline. We can say all kinds of things of why it's happening. But one thing I know, it's not because God is finished with that church. It's because people have left the promise. When God started this church, there was a promise for this community, for this church to do a work. God hasn't changed his mind, so we shouldn't leave the promise. No matter how bleak things look, no matter, there's ebbs and flows of ministry, and it's not because, churches don't go into decline because it's bad preachers or it's bad members or it's all these different things. It's because we leave the promise. Rahab stayed right where the promise was made, and she was delivered. And if we will stay true to the promise, we are a light to this community. No matter who's preaching from the pulpit or who's sitting in the pews, this church is designed by God to be a light and a life changer in this community and beyond. And that's what it's going to be. The sixth and last thing I have is faith is proven by moving, not by freezing in fear. You're standing at the edge of the bank, called out on the ice. Faith isn't proven by being too scared to step out on the ice. Faith is proven when you start walking. Rahab's faith wasn't proven by hiding with the spies, but she harbored them and misled the king's men, risked being a traitor. Nor was her faith proven the moment that the walls fell. It was proven when she hung the cord up while the walls were still standing. Knowing the risk, believing what the promise would hold. She didn't see the results of the promise prior to walking in the promise. If you believe the ice will hold, get out there and walk. If you don't, you won't get out there. Walking out on the ice is proof. Faith is proven by action. It's an action word. Faith is proven by action prior to seeing the result. Maybe you've heard this. Faith can move mountains. You ever heard that? Faith can move mountains, but sometimes it's God handing you a shovel. You know what I mean? Yeah, we think faith, I got faith. Well, faith says, just tell that mountain to go. We want to believe that faith just comes and just automatically does this thing, right? It's like this autopilot switch. I could just turn the faith on and it's just going to, you know what? That's automation. That's not how it works. That's automation. That's like an autopilot doing things without human interaction at that point. That's not how faith works. Faith is more not automation. Faith is more motivation. Faith says you need to go. You need to walk. You need to move. You can do this. Get out there and walk on that ice. I got you. Not click a button and watch things happen. It's us doing it, moving in faith. James chapter 2. I'm going to read this to you. Almost done. Starting in verse 14. What good is it, my brothers, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can that faith save him? If a brother or sister is poorly clothed and lacking in daily food, and one of you says to them, "Go in peace and be warmed and filled," without giving them the things needed for the body, what good is that? So also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. But someone will say, "You have faith and I have works. Show me your faith apart from your works, and I will show you my faith by my works. You believe that God is one. You do well. Even the demons believe and shudder. Do you want to be shown, you foolish person, that faith apart from works is useless? Was not Abraham our father justified by works when he offered up his son Isaac on the altar? You see that faith was active along with his works, and faith was completed by his works. And the scripture was fulfilled that says, Abraham believed God, and it was counted to him as righteousness. And he was called a friend of God. You see that a person is justified by works and not by faith alone. And in the same way, was not also Rahab the prostitute justified by works when she received the messengers and sent them out by another way? For as the body apart from the spirit is dead, so also faith apart from works is dead. It was explained to me a long time ago. It's like, I got two legs, right? One of them is faith, one of them is works. And it takes both of them moving together if we're going to get anywhere. Faith apart from works is dead. Faith is proven through the works, through what we do. I have faith. I've said it before. I have faith that God is going to do something awesome in this church. I have faith there is revival coming. And again, not talking about evangelistic services and all through nights of the week. And I'm talking God breathing life, breathing spirit, breathing something amazing into this community. Something it hasn't seen before. Not because of me, because of Him. And I believe it. And I have faith. Do you have faith in that? It's going to take action then. It's going to take doing something. We can't just sit back and hope and wish it well. There's a part that we play in all of this. The bank might feel safer, but God is calling us to step out from where it feels safe and to walk into walking into the unknown. Faith, again, it isn't just believing that the ice will hold. It's actually getting out there and walking on it, taking the step. A partial step on the ice is not complete trust. See, I don't want to just lean on God. There's a song, Leaning on the Everlasting Arms, and it's a beautiful song, and I'm sure there's nothing wrong about saying that. But see, I don't want to lean on God like I lean on this podium, right? I don't have faith in putting all my weight on this podium, because then you'll just laugh at me like the cheerleaders did. But I do have faith to put everything. I don't want to lean on God. I want to put everything I am on Him and trust Him with all of it. I want to hang the cord before the walls fall. That's what I want to do. I don't want to wait until fear disappears. Rahab didn't. She had courage. And I've heard it said like this: courage isn't the absence of fear, but it's the obedience in the midst of fear. 3 questions and then I'm done. Where is God calling you to trust Him? Where is He calling you? Because maybe you're standing at the edge of something right now. Where is He calling you to put your weight, to trust? What action is faith demanding of you? What step do you need to take? What is it? The last one, what are you going to do about it? Because you can do nothing and you get nowhere else. What's God calling you to trust Him with? What action is faith demanding of you? What are you going to do about it?